Hi, everyone. I'm Elaine Brewster. Welcome to Aspects of It, a forum where we talk about ways to raise your energy. We're going to talk about being entrepreneurs. There was a program that you might want to catch. Look up Aligning with Success on YouTube by Michael DiMuccio from March 7th of 2022. And he talks about those four quadrants that Robert Kiyosaki talks about, where so many people and a lot of our college graduates, they go to that first quadrant, which is being employed, a big E. And what all of them would love to do is what I am with reading lessons, and that's an S, being self-employed. But then he says it's the people who are in B, the business owners, those are the ones that are making more money because they're using other people. And then, of course, that last quadrant is I, that's an investor, and that's people who have a great deal of money that can invest. So, anyway, catch that. He talks about the E and the S and the B a lot. And today we've got a couple of really wonderful people who happen to be married, and they are entrepreneurs in the full sense of the word. Susan is a children's book author. This is She Drew That. This is adorable. Don't crickets get sore throats? And as a singer, I really, really liked this book too, because I was really feeling for the crickets. She has her own podcast, and I'm going to have each of you tell us the sites because for some reason I didn't write them down. Kels is a film director and a film producer, and he and they both actually just owned and sold this LDS Film Festival, which now is called
it's called Zion International Film Festival.
And and for me, little old me sitting here, I'm going, who buys a film festival?
That's what I was wondering.
Who buys a team? And so, I'm just thrilled to have you on today because I know that you've got to leave the state on Sunday and you're busy getting ready to go. Can you tell us about why you kind of chose the field and the direction you did, and and how you approach being an entrepreneur, doing these things on your own?
Well, film is very, I hear other audio, I apologize. It's kind of interrupting sometimes. So if anybody else has audio, they may want to mute it. So just temporarily, but I do that too. I still figuring out Zoom a little bit, but it kind of started, film in general is a very contractor friendly business. Because once the movie's over, you're done and you move on. And so that's why you have to constantly be thinking of what's next and what are you doing, and you have to, and so they're in many levels. And my dad was an entrepreneur, and and I loved his entrepreneur spirit, but he was also more business minded and I was more artist minded. Now, my dad, we grew up in Virginia, Richmond, Virginia, and my dad is actually a DC guy. He was from DC, but we moved to Richmond when I was a baby, and he was big into real estate and big into property management. He even wrote a book about property management, and I wish I remember the name of it right at the top of my head.
Income stream.
The income stream. That's
Yep.
right. So, and he wrote that about 20 years ago. But he did pretty well. And then in the 70s, we moved to South Padre Island, Texas, and he kind of saw ahead of time the growth of this little island down there, which now literally at the tip end of the island is where Elon Musk shoots off his rockets and has SpaceX. So you can see it's kind of that little quiet, it's right at the very bottom of the whole state, right on the border of Mexico and right on the beach.
I mean, how many of you think about an island when you think about Texas?
Yeah, it's
Oh.
kind of a, its own thing. So he did really well, and he bought condos, and he would do this system where he would entice people to come to South Padre, rent them a condo, and say, "See, you like it," and then he would do real estate with them, and then he would sell. So he had a great system there.
How many did he own on the island?
He owned upwards of 35 of his own condos, and he rented about 300 with his business over time, 300 other condos for other people. And we still own that business today, and he's passed away. But while I grew up, I wanted to make movies, because when I was 10, that's when Star Wars had come out. And a lot of filmmakers who are my age, that was the perfect age to watch Star Wars, was when you're 10 years old, because then you can start deciding your life plans. That's right. Your life plans start going to, "Hey, Dad, I'm going to make movies." And my dad was like, "Yeah, that's nice. Let me know when you're going to do something real." And it took many years for me to figure out the mishaps of the film business, because there are many.
Well,
Is
and that's something that a lot of us on this call can relate to, because some of the healthcare products that we deal with just seem so unlikely to many people nowadays, even though the company's 46 years old, but I think 47 this year maybe. But it's still so unlikely that people still are going, "Really?"
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's kind of and the hardest part is, investment wise, movies are a thing where you throw your money away, and because they don't, the money side of the film business can be so shady, and it can be very difficult.
What do we call it? An expensive hobby?
My dad called it an expensive hobby. And so, but over the years, I just kind of determined that's what I was going to do. And so I've always tried to find business sensible practices that could keep me still making movies. I tell young filmmakers to go get a marketing degree, don't get a film degree, because they'll end up, you can go work for a company doing marketing, and then you'll make movies or videos. You'll practice that art doing that. And one of my favorite jobs that I was very lucky to have was I worked for a company called Blendtec here in Orem. And Blendtec was a very well known for their blenders, very powerful blenders. And so Tom Dixon, who was the guy who was the inventor and started the company, and he's an entrepreneur himself. In fact, he was best entrepreneur of Utah a few years ago. And I helped make him famous. And so I went to work for the company doing marketing about 15 years ago. And
did you figure out the golf ball in the blender? I mean, haven't any of you seen the golf ball being blended up, and you're going, "You're kidding me"?
Yeah.
I mean, that's really powerful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, the thing was that was the story, is that I went to work for them when they didn't have any marketing. And I was actually hired to make training videos so the restaurants and smoothie shops that would use the product would know how to use them, because there was a certain complication to it. So in doing so, while they were exploring some marketing items, they were going to do a traditional infomercial. And an infomercial is generally those 30-minute videos that you would watch late at night, and play the same thing over and over, and say, "Order now, 4 easy payments," kind of, commercial, and, not very creative, but you could make it as creative as you wanted. And so we were getting ready to do that, because a Blendtec blender was a $400 blender.
Mhm.
and it was going to be 4 easy payments of $99.99, and it required a 30-minute infomercial to describe how to use it. Then one day, Tom, the owner of the company, we watched him do a test where he took a 2x4 and he stuck it in his blender and he gnawed it down to sawdust. And we decided for fun to film that and stick it on this new platform called YouTube. And YouTube was not meant to be used as a sales tool. It was more for people's cat videos and silly kind of videos that they would do and stick it on. It's kind of the cesspool of
Home
people's
videos.
of home videos
Yeah.
is what YouTube was at the beginning. And
Wow.
so I had never heard of it, and so we made these comedy videos, and the first thing we blended was some marbles, and it blended it down to dust.
Who would think to put
And
marbles into a blender just
yeah.
to see what it looks like when it's blended?
Yeah, I don't want to ruin my blender. Like, no thanks.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely ruined the jars.
But it definitely showed the power of the blender. And when you have ice in a blender, you want to be able to make sure that it chunks it up the way that it needs to make a
Yeah.
good smoothie.
So we produced that, and then we our view count was in the thousands at the beginning, and then as we started doing a video every week, and we would put one out every week, the kids would watch it and giggle, and they wouldn't take it seriously, but we still were producing it because it was cheap. It was way cheaper than a $500,000 infomercial campaign. And so we after we did that, then finally we blended an iPod. And the iPod was sort of where all of a sudden our views went into the millions. And it was because we cross-branded with another company. So basically we took somebody else's product and we destroyed it. And then all of a sudden everybody wanted their product destroyed and blended. And so
Kimberly
long as
said, I remember watching those.
That's right.
yeah, that was kind of a fun thing. And so
They were a pretty big deal on the YouTube, and people really enjoyed watching something get destroyed. There's something about it that we love to see
Yeah.
something get destroyed.
yeah, there's a thrill about it for some reason. And it's what I call shock marketing. It's
Yeah.
a way to be able to get people to they have no choice but to look at this crazy thing while scrolling on their phone and wasting their time. And so we did that, and it became this, it started to become this kind of gag that people liked. And then our views, like I said, went into the millions because we started cross branding. And then the first iPhone had come out, and we blended the first iPhone. And
That's right, Trent. Don't breathe this.
That's right.
Exactly right. Which is actually the name of the documentary that Kels just finished.
we just did a documentary about it, talking about viral marketing. But then we took our little gag and we made it on the Today Show and the Tonight Show and the View, and we were number one on YouTube for several years. We had the biggest viral campaign of all time for a short while.
We had quite a few adventures with the Will It Blend. We were
Yeah.
taken to all kinds of places, and
Yeah.
it was interesting to go somewhere and be recognized. Well, Tom Dixon especially.
Yeah.
And people actually dressed up like him for Halloween costumes.
Because he wore a lab coat, and yeah, it was kind of funny, and we had a good time with it. And Tom Dixon was a really great employer to work for, and also very inspiring. And he was an engineer and also an entrepreneur, and he wasn't the best businessman. He would love to give everything away if he could. And so he always had to have a CEO to kind of control his his ins and outs.
He has such a good heart.
Yeah.
He's an amazing man.
So I left the company in 2013, and then I went to do some other things. I made some other films, tried to learn the system of being able to produce a movie and sell it, and produce a movie and sell it. And that's sort of something where if you can get plugged into that kind of system, it becomes a successful situation. But if you only, it's a numbers game. So if you only make one movie and you put everything into that movie, you need to be careful, because it takes a long time from the time you make a film and then you sell it and then you actually get your return. It could be a year and a half or more before you see anything. And so the goal of filmmaking is to make it cheap, to make it temporary, to get it done, and to be ready for another. And that's why sequels and remakes are such a big deal, because they're sure hits. Even if they stink for movies and stories, they at least have a system down, and it makes business become good. So
It's kind of like having a series in books.
yeah. So a lot of people think a sequel is like totally planned, and it's not. It's a sequel is made because they need to make more money. That's it. That's the answer.
Well, there's
So,
nothing wrong with that. Charles
no,
Dickens
there's
wrote
nothing
A
wrong with
Christmas
it.
Carol.
That's
For
right.
that very reason, he needed some money.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think he knocked it out in 3 weeks.
Yeah. Well, in Utah, there's a big, and we're lucky here in Utah because we have several markets that we work with, and that's what led me to owning the film festival. In 2000, there was a gentleman named Richard Dutcher who made a movie about Mormon missionaries that was positive, because usually Mormon missionaries or anything Mormon has always been kind of made fun of and been kind of the butt end of a joke, and the polygamy and the many wives or whatever, Mormons on their bicycles, they're always kind of funny and silly. And but Richard decided to make a film about Mormon missionaries that was actually positive and informational, and it actually did very well. And what it did was it started this little market that allowed being able to talk about Mormonism, so to speak, and be positive and actually make money. Because that's the biggest key, is that can you produce something with a religious flair, cater it to the audience and then some, and then make money so that you can do it again. And he kind of started that process in the year 2000. And when he did, and he made a movie called God's Army. And after that had happened, then all of a sudden this flood of LDS Mormon filmmakers kind of came in and said, "Oh, I've got one, and I've got one," and the theaters. There's a couple of people who were Mormon who helped run a few theaters, and they gave it a shot. They gave it a chance to put it in some theaters to see if there was a market there, and there was, and there became some successful films over the last 20 years. Thus justifying a film festival with LDS content. And what's interesting is over the years, it's really the content in the LDS Film Festival hasn't always been LDS content. It's been just family friendly. That's really kind of the basis. It's not, you don't have to be Mormon, or it doesn't have to be a religious content. In fact, only like about 30% of the movies actually have a religious content to it. And there's other faiths that also come in and bring their movies now.
Well,
And
yeah,
so
I'm thinking of like Soul Surfer is one of my favorite movies.
Oh yeah.
exactly.
Fireproof.
Oh,
Facing the Giants.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Great movies.
Love those movies.
We celebrated all those. Yeah. And so those have kind of evolved over the years, and
Definitely.
they've really figured out the system, and there've been a few players. And so having this festival, I haven't owned it for all 20 years, 21 years, but I worked it for a good 10. And then I bought it 5 years ago and kind of took it to another level, because it kind of started as a college thing. I don't know if the movie Napoleon Dynamite. Napoleon Dynamite was made by my neighbor, and they were all college kids. That's I knew half the cast, and they were just people fooling around being funny.
Yeah.
and it became a hit, and so from that,
Kels had his hands on the script of Napoleon Dynamite.
yeah, I was
And it was
originally
called Palooka at that time.
I was going to originally help them with it, and I got too busy. I thought it was a silly thing, and I should have listened. Because $50 million later.
I'll tell you, it took me 2 times to finally watch that movie and then start appreciating it, because I didn't like it in the beginning, but man, it is so quoted all over the place.
You have to get into that particular humor and just
Yeah.
with it.
It's definitely its own kind of humor, and Jared Hess, who directed it, has gone on to do some other fun things, and
Lucky.
so lucky. So look at her quoting it. So that's great. But
we had him at the film festival. We just had a Christmas season where we showed 4 Christmas movies.
We had a film festival
in
Christmas
December.
event. Yeah.
And he was John Heater, who plays Napoleon, was one of the main characters for a movie called Funny Thing About Love. It's a very cute movie. I highly recommend it.
So,
It's directed by
Adam White.
White.
Yeah, it was really it was a good experience, and we had but let's see, I'm trying to remember where we were going. So and it's also gone into now the series known as The Chosen, and The Chosen has also become very popular series, and I know Dallas Jenkins. I'm friends with him even before The Chosen. And the background on The Chosen is that a couple of guys here locally who happen to be LDS, who happen to be Mormon, they started a company called VidAngel. And what they were offering is edited movies on a streaming platform, and they started some other side things where they did comedy commercials on YouTube, and then they did a thing called Dry Bar Comedy, which was comedy that's clean. It's the whole focus is to keep clean content. It doesn't even have to be religious. It just has to be friendly.
Yeah.
And so Dallas approached VidAngel about this idea of doing this series about Christ and about everybody around Christ, and made it in a real fashion, and it became a hit. And so they shot the first season down in Texas, and they shot the second season here in Utah. And they actually
that place, it's just south of me. It's a place called Goshen.
Correct.
There.
Yeah.
But tell them what it's like.
Well, Goshen is a big set that's actually built by the Mormon Church. It's actually the LDS faith guys they spent a lot on movies. They've got a decent budget for their movies, and they built this beautiful set that looks like Jerusalem out by the lake. And so they kind of go away from the mountains a little bit, and they go out to the desert part, and it's doubles as Jerusalem, so that they don't have to go to Jerusalem to shoot things. And it's such a beautiful thing. And what kills me is, I've been Mormon all my life, and I've worked on church things, and they won't even let me on that set. And yet they let The Chosen come out and film on that set. And so it's just amazing. But it was a good tool to bond together with other faiths. And I think it was a wonderful experience with Dallas Jenkins. And
well, we'd invited him to the film festival before Chosen was out.
Yeah, we showed the first showing.
People who Dallas Jenkins is.
Dallas Jenkins is the director of The Chosen. And he's a faith-based film director from Chicago, and I knew him kind of before. Just he was a fan of one of my earlier films that I'd done, And so, but we only knew each other electronically. I'd never met him face
Oh.
to face, but we brought him to the LDS Film Festival and showed that very first showing of The Chosen publicly.
Wow.
And so we were very
Yeah, we
honored
had
to have that.
a workshop with
And
him, and
yeah,
he shared how The Chosen came together and that he really lived his passion of being an instrument of God and bringing that message forward. And the neat thing about The Chosen is that instead of being like reading from the Bible where we see the these and thous and thou arts, they don't speak like that.
yeah,
And in that way, they allow you to form an understandable relationship with those characters.
yeah. It's very humanizing, the characters and making it to where they're more like friends instead of this, this character that I'm just reading about
Untouchable.
that's untouchable.
Yeah.
Oh, how did he find his Jesus? Did he ever mention?
I don't remember. I haven't.
I'm sure that he shared his story.
Yeah, I'm sure he has somewhere on there. I haven't watched a lot of the videos. I haven't even watched all of The Chosen either. But I've just
I
been
have.
I've been impressed. She's way better at catching up on things. But I've just
I
been,
married a movie man. Can you tell?
yeah,
They say that a landscaper's wife is the last
to get their work done.
landscaping done at their
Yeah.
home.
Our
Yeah.
home videos are terrible. So
Our our wedding was captured on 10 or on a
on a
disposable.
still, yeah.
Yeah.
It's terrible. But everybody else's film looks great that I've done. So, but
They look amazing, including my podcast. They look amazing.
yeah. So anyway, so that's kind of, so that the business model of film has evolved so much over the years because especially in recent days, where streaming is all over the place. And you can have your movie in the theater and you can have a movie streaming at the same time, and then it's on DVD a month later. And it's just, or they don't put it on DVD anymore. We're in such evolution to where, in the early days of video, there used to be VHS and Betamax. And for several years, there was actually movies that had come out on Betamax. And there's a war between Betamax and VHS, and then VHS wins. And why they win, how they win, we don't know. And that's kind of where we're at now, is we don't know Netflix and Amazon and all these different platforms that are there. It's like they're all winning and all losing at the same time. And so because there's constant flow of information that's so crazy. So you have to connect with a distributor that knows how to sit there and babysit, kind of like watching the stock market, where you kind of almost have to watch and see, oh, this one, they pull their movies out from one place and stick it somewhere else because they can stream it anywhere they want, but everybody changes the type of platform that they're watching it on. So in the wild market, there has to be people that, there are those that's all they do, is they just watch what markets are going to go up and down to make as much money for your movie. Anyway, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I'm just thinking that in some of the books that I read, about business, I get to a point where I just go, I am so glad that I don't have to handle that. Because in network marketing, the company is doing a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
They're handling the platforms, they're handling the distribution, they're handling, and I only have to handle a certain amount of this. But just to recap, some of what I'm hearing from you is that you were determined. Your dad didn't think that was viable, but you knew that it was. You made a decision. And also you mentioned about business practices. And so, and like you were saying about Tom Dixon, who was the president and innovator and inventor of Blendtec, he needed someone else. He needed several someones to be the CEO, to be a marketer. He needed other people with him because he just wanted to give.
Yeah.
give
You could have given away the
everything.
company. That's right. I understand that.
Yeah, and you're also willing to innovate, though, and I think that that's something that each individual can do. How can I approach, doing this children's book or doing this new movie? And I really tell my phone to turn off, but I don't know how to tell the computer to turn off. And I think another big thing that you've mentioned a couple of times is the system, like produce, sell it,
Yeah.
and again, harking back to what I mentioned at the very beginning, that was one of the things that Michael DiMuccio in this call that he gave, that's on Aligning with Success, that's on YouTube from Monday, March 2nd, March 7th, is he's talking about being part of a system, because then you can bring other people into it. And then that's how you can, reach out and involve.
Yeah. Utah is big with, we're all our filmmaker friends. We all know each other, and a lot of us kind of work with each other. The LDS market is one thing, but the other market that's hot here is the Hallmark market. And the idea to make this love story concept, in a lot of cases they're Christmas movies, tons of them are shot here.
Really?
Tons. I mean, I would say,
yeah.
and there's,
Yes.
Saturday Night Live once made a joke about the perfect Hallmark movie, and it's always this kind of, single woman who's got her career together, and she runs into this boy she hasn't seen since high school. Same old thing, and they have hot cocoa during Christmas, and they fall in love, but it can't be, but it must be. And then they get together, and it's the same formula, but it still works. And for some reason, they make them here, and
I have a sheet of paper where you can choose
you can fill in the
comes
blank.
back from, or da 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 da,
Yeah.
up until and happily ever after.
And there's the
pretty-
system.
Pretty formatic.
Yeah, that from writing it. Yeah, formulaic. That's it. From script to shooting it to getting it edited, and then to posting it on either Hallmark or Feelin or some of these other channels that are out there. Positive TV. There's so many that I just call them Hallmark, even though most of them aren't on Hallmark, but they fit that narrative that people are hungry for. And it's amazing to see, even though we laugh at it, they're still hungry for it. And it's just, so you may as well feed it because it's clean and it's nice and it promotes good stuff. And so this is a hotbed right now. And we have one of my new distributor right now that I'm working with, that's what they do. They make their own movies, but they also distribute others. And they have a system. They're plugged in, and they're watching they're watching where the films are going. And they if they're done playing in one place and they see the numbers going down, they pull it out and they stick it in this other place. And somehow I don't know how to do that part. I can stick it on Amazon Prime, but that's about it. I don't know how to do all the other places that makes money for it, but it is there. And that's the part that I wished I'd known 30 years ago, but a lot of it didn't exist.
That's
So
true. But can you tell us about your quarantine movie?
Oh yeah. Well, Steph and I made a decision that we were going to invest in it. We had some money, and everybody was in quarantine, and for fun, we had a friend that writes a lot of those Hallmarky movies. And I jokingly told her, I said, hey, why don't you write me a script about, COVID and a love story? And she totally did. And she wrote this cute movie called Quarantine for Two. And we shot it really cheap. I won't even say for how much, but let's just say
we will say that it was done in 7 days.
Yeah, we shot it in 7
with
days.
A crew of 7 people and 2 actors, which is
the whole film has 2 actors.
Making.
And they're talking to each other via Zoom,
similar to this, only not.
Yeah. And then, of course, at the end, they fall in love, and
He's
but it's the
so
same
cute.
formula, but it was done in quarantine and it worked. And so, we have it distributed and it played in theaters a while back, and now it'll be coming out soon. And it's on Amazon Prime, but yeah, Quarantine for Two. It's a cute little movie we did. And
You can go to
You know.
kelsgoodman.com.
yeah, you can go to kelsgoodman.com, my name.com, and you can see all my films. You can see all the stuff I've done and where to buy it. So it's kind of fun.
I'll write that down here. Feels good.
Yeah, and the fun thing about that movie is that it is so relatable. It doesn't matter where you are in life. You can relate it to your grandchildren, your nieces, yourself. It is so relatable, and it doesn't make you feel like you're watching a cheesy movie. I mean, let me say this. If you enjoy Hallmark, you will definitely enjoy Quarantine for Two.
Yeah, that's
But I will say that Quarantine for Two is better quality than Hallmark movie.
so nice of her to say that. So.
She is your wife.
Coming from a lady. So
You can pay me later.
that's right. I'll pay her.
What kind of questions do any of you have? Sandra, Don Marie? I'm just seeing people whose mics are unmuted. That may mean something or may not.
Yeah. Maybe we answered all the questions.
I
I have a
So.
question. So great to have you. And
Hi.
Hi.
I've never met anyone that does what you guys do. I know some actors, starving actors.
Yep.
And I do know, I've watched many movies. I love rom-coms. I just watched actually the other day, my daughter and I watched J-Lo's newest one, Marry Me, just because I love J-Lo. But the movie, the whole concept was kind of weird. But anyhow, I was going to ask you about documentaries. Do you guys do many of those?
Well, that's a good question. We actually did do, I finished 2 of them last year. Because of COVID, I had time to finish old stuff that was sitting around, and not old, but just stuff that I thought, oh, I got time. So, because documentaries take a lot of time. And I'm not going to do them much anymore. I'm going to stick to dramas, but I did do 3 documentaries, and one of them was about my time with Will It Blend. So I have Tom Dixon on there, and you get to see the history of viral marketing is really what it's about.
Very entertaining, and you get to see some of the adventures that we got to have.
Yeah.
Some even with the Mythbusters. You know who they are?
Mythbusters.
Yes, those
They
are
were
cool.
fans of Will It Blend, so they were on camera. But the other one I did was a documentary on the 80s band The Jets. So if you remember the Jets from the 1980s, I'm friends with them, and so I followed them for a few years. And so this is just a lot of that footage and their story, because they're from Tonga, and they're such a beautiful family.
I have an
And,
incredible story of coming from Tonga to America and just making their dream come alive.
Making their dreams come
A family
true.
of how many?
17.
17.
In one family, one set of parents. But the oldest 8 were the ones that were in the band in the 80s that were famous. Crush on You and all that stuff. Those were their hits.
And the Jets, the interesting
So-
about them is that you'll remember them when you hear their music,
Yeah.
but when you think about the Jets, the music doesn't come
You don't know
forward to you.
it's kind of,
But
like-
they won 3 gold records. I
they
think.
had 3 gold records and 8 top 10 hits. And we met in doing the documentary, we met like Vanilla Ice and Tone Loc and Tiffany and
Oh,
all these,
cool. Oh my gosh, all the 80s.
they would play in group concerts that, because a lot of them don't, they don't make as much money on their records anymore. So they got to make them off of performing or whatever else. And I think
Cruises.
Vanilla Ice makes money off of real estate now instead of or whatever, but
He's got a
they're
real
all cool,
job.
and they're all in the film. They all play it. They're all in the film for a moment here and there because we run into them. So, but so documentaries are great. I'm kind of slowing down on the documentaries mostly for the sake of financially. I'm hearing more and more that they're not as financially viable, and they take a long time to do because if there's other parties involved, it could go on for years. And because while you can have a script, it's the script usually changes and changes and changes. Whereas if you're doing one of these love romantic comedies, you know exactly what you're going to film, and you know exactly when the end date's going to be, and all that kind of, it's all planned out. And you know, in 4 months time, you can finish a movie. Whereas a documentary, the Jets documentary took me 5 years. And so it's not very financially viable because life kept changing for the band, you know, things kept happening. So, but I love documentary, which is funny because it's like I watch documentaries more than anything else, but they're not very financially.
They're also shutting things down on Amazon for accepting documentaries.
Yeah, Amazon.
So that's hard for the
Amazon
filmmakers.
won't take any more new documentaries.
Wow.
They got
What's your
bought out.
third documentary?
Oh, it was a series called Hidden in the Heartland. And it's actually more about ancient American relics in America. We did that about
In the eastern states.
Yeah. So about who lived here before Columbus in America.
Like
So long
national
before
treasure in real life.
Yeah.
That's right.
So,
Yeah.
but
You know,
Very
I was just
true.
thinking that that if I could have just written my experiences in my book, it would have been so much faster. But it was the research. It's when I got to the research and the scientific things where I had to just step back, and I had to spend days, you know, knowing what we had done. But now, how do I explain that to an audience?
Right.
And that's kind of your, you know, your documentary-ish, rather than just, you know, telling a story.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really, documentaries are awesome when you're really interested in the subject and you really immerse yourself in that subject. But it could go on and on if you're not strong enough to say, okay, I got to draw a line here. I can't keep going. And the story could go on forever, but I need to stop here. And there's a great new documentary coming out that you need to look for called Waterman.
Oh, absolutely.
So Waterman is about Duke, and I can't remember the pronunciation
Oh,
of his last name. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's Hawaiian. He's the great Hawaiian named Duke, who was a surfer.
The big
And
kahuna.
they call it, yeah, he's the original big kahuna. And he's kind of perfected the aloha spirit, and he also introduced surfing, and
Yeah.
it's amazing.
It
Made by
is
friends of
amazing.
We showed it at the LDS Film Festival to a sold out crowd, and there's a lot of drama to it. So they have dramatic reenactments, and Jason Momoa narrates it, who is the perfect guy. He's Aquaman, and he is Hawaiian himself. And so he
They were
narrated
very
it.
fortunate to have that.
Yeah, that was such a neat. So it's a great docu. So look
But
for
this is-
Waterman.
This is a real life superhero who
Yeah.
really talks about the spirit of Ohana. And we don't follow those rules anymore. We're in such a world where it's all about us, right?
Yeah.
We want to be the newest, biggest, what would you say? The biggest sensation, right?
Yeah.
We have Instagram
And he was
superheroes,
he was humble, and
but he was very,
he was
very
he was
humble.
he was to himself and
Yeah.
loved other people. It's great. It'll be in theaters next month, from what I've heard. So look for Waterman. But
Nice.
Highly recommend that.
anyway, we'll see if there's any other.
Now, Kimberly Smith said she has a question for us. If you are still there.
Hi,
Go
I'm
ahead,
still here.
Kimberly.
Can you hear me?
Hi, Kimberly.
Hi, Kimberly. I know that voice.
Yeah, well, I'm
Yeah.
not gonna show my face because I just come back from massage therapy and my hair's like all over the place. So no.
We won't. Just our closest friends right here. So
Well, Steph, as you both know, I write historical fiction and I do music. And right now I'm joining in with someone who's illustrating one of my children's books
Oh, that's wonderful, Kimberly.
that I've had in my filing cabinet for like 20 years. She was just
Oh, I
like,
understand that.
why didn't you do something with this? And I said, well, I just didn't think it was good enough. She said, that's your biggest problem. You never think you're good enough. She said, I want
Right.
to illustrate this. So as a creator, and I know a lot of creators are like this, the hard part is taking it to the next step and getting it out.
Yeah.
And that's because we just want to create and hand it off to someone, because the whole networking thing and stuff like that,
Mhm.
it's just overwhelming. And I've got so many projects I want to turn to and start next. So yeah, any kind of advice you can offer there, because it's just, I know when we were in Utah doing all of our firesides and everything, I would ask people about that aspect of things. And a lot of it was about who you knew.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the sad part. And that's why it was hard for me, because, none of my family are in any arts at all.
Yeah.
And I'm the youngest of 7. And you'd think somebody would play piano or something, and nobody did anything. They were all business people, and they all, it just was like, okay. And so being in the arts was made it very difficult to get started. And so I had to embarrass myself for many years to do this and do that and figure it out and mess up here and spend money here and make a lot of mistakes. And I think the biggest thing is just a matter of tenacity, to being able to stick to picking one thing and going at it, finding out every cost that it takes, and just going step 1, step 2, step 3 for that cost. But here's the thing: once you get through that first one, then it's a numbers game.
Mhm.
And you have to expect nothing back at the beginning, but look at it as a numbers game as far as your time in it. That's why, if I have to, that's why a lot of these movies, for example, and books and arts that are done, Steph and I have talked about, some new children's books she wants to do. And we've tried to talk about the time. The one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to do something that takes so much time, except at the beginning, but something that through time you can be able to produce and get it done
And reproduce.
and get it done and reproduce and get it done, so that the numbers game is played.
Right.
So playing the numbers, that's why podcasts are so successful for a lot of people, is they can sit down with a minimal amount of equipment and they can pull it up and they can, get it done. And then in minutes, you're on air and you're doing something, and you can do it every week. You can do it every
As long as
day,
you're consistent,
you
you
know,
keep putting out
and you
consistent.
build numbers.
product
It's
and-
always, yeah. So you don't want to like put so much into one book
Mhm.
and then be tired at the end of the day, because then the person who takes the book, they don't see all those hours.
Right.
So you've got to judge how many hours. The first one is always the hardest. The first one will always, but you got to do it knowing there's going to be another one and another one and another one.
Yeah.
So that they go faster, so they go quicker, and then you sell more. Because you sell one, it's like this Hidden in the Heartland series I did. By the time it got to a second and a third episode and a fourth episode, it became easier. And then I did a second
true.
season.
Because we knew the formula.
We
what
knew the
were looking to
formula,
do.
and it
what
got it
worked.
to where, yeah, that's why a lot of times a lot of people will get the sophomore slump in films, arts, books. They'll get one thing produced and then you'll never see them again.
Or we call
I
it
know.
the old boyfriend syndrome.
Yeah. Where you
Where you
get,
just get bored and
Yeah.
you look for ways to break
get-
up with them, right?
you get one thing done and then you're just like, wow, that was so much work. I don't think I can do it again. And
Yeah.
they never come back, or they don't make their money
Mhm.
back, or their investor just wasn't satisfied, or
It's interesting to look, because when I published my children's book, that was in 2000, I actually illustrated that book that was shown by Elaine my high school year.
wow.
And it took 5 years for me to pull it off of the shelf. Yep, there it is.
Yeah.
My Don't Crickets Get Sore Throats. That was written by a woman, and her son was 30 years old at that time when she hired me to illustrate that book. This is the first book that I'd illustrated, and it took us 5 years to finally be picked up by a company that was willing to invest in publishing it and making it possible. Now, there's some things that I learned from that I would probably give advice to others that are publishing a children's book. For instance, make sure that the book has a spine on it,
Right.
because there's no spine.
can't find
This
it.
cannot go into the libraries. They cannot have their SKU number on there. There cannot be a title on the back. And if you put these in the stores, they just disappear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we would like to actually republish this book for that option of being able to have a spine on it.
Yeah, you always have to think the end in mind.
Yes.
When you produce movies or do any arts, is somebody going to watch this? Is somebody going to read this? Are they going to be interested in it?
Mhm.
And or are they just being nice to me, by coming, when success in my world in film is when you go from just your friends coming to see your movie. Oh, look, there's so and so. There's my sister. There's the person in my church congregation. Oh, there's my neighbor. Look, they're showing up to my movie. But when strangers start to show up, that's
Yeah.
when it becomes successful. When it's
Mhm.
somebody you've never heard of, and you're like, "Why are you here?" They say, "Well, I saw it on this commercial," or "I saw it. I heard about it here and there." And all of a sudden, when it starts, like Facebook, like when you're working Facebook, and I remember when I did Hidden in the Heartland, my series, and I had a Facebook page, and everybody who were my friends were the ones being fans. But then when the fans became for people I don't know, people who I'd never heard of, never saw, they're not friends with other people, I went, okay, now we're in the success zone, because now we're feeding people that aren't just the friends who come out because they're nice to you,
Yeah.
because they're kind. Is when you get past that group, that's when you're starting to reach a little bit of a success, and that the formula will work.
Right.
And so anyway,
Yeah.
so that's kind of
Yeah.
something to think about.
And speaking of friends, I want to give a shout out to my friend Trenton Wilson. He actually grew up with me in my small town, and he remembers me being an artist. I was known as the artist of that small
I think
town.
he's on with us.
So
Trenton,
it's
Yeah,
it's
he's
fun to be able to see him pop in and to be able to say I'm still an artist, just like I promised when I was younger.
that was a long answer to a short question, Kimberly. So thanks for your patience.
That's fine. I enjoyed it. Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff.
Really, what trials did you come up on when you were getting your book published? And congratulations on getting your book published, by the way.
So which one, the Rising Hills and Sinking Valleys?
Yes.
That was difficult because since it was, if I can just set the premise, so Joseph and Emma Smith are my great grandparents, and I'm a convert to the church, and so it's the story of my line from the Smith family, and in each generation what they went through, why Emma stayed, and where the division happened, and just how everything came full circle for me. So it was an LDS market specific.
LDS market.
Yeah.
So
So a lot of the trials that I ran into was I sent it to Deseret book first, and I'm trying to remember the name of the guy. He was Stephen.
Oh, and Deseret Book, just for those, because a lot of people here aren't LDS on this
Right.
thing, but Deseret Book is like the Mormon bookstore,
Right.
that kind of owns. Anyway, I just was going to say that's on the Deseret, and so you were working with them.
Yeah,
trying
there was a council of people that read it, and I think his last name was Covey.
Oh,
Yeah, and he
Nice.
contacted me and he said, this book is very compelling. It needs to be out there. But as a whole, the council as a whole decided not to publish it. There are a lot of things that they would have had me taken out that I really couldn't. And he and I
interesting.
talked
Yeah,
about
it's
this.
hard when you work with someone else and
Yeah.
to
And he said, but keep
it.
keep pushing this. So he said it needs to be out there. And so that's what I did. And it was finally it was at the Book of Mormon conference, which Steph, you and Kels have been at several times, that I met a gentleman that has a publishing company, and he had a lot of his books there, and he offered to publish it for me. And so because I was out there doing firesides, and the firesides were things that it was missionary, that's something that I didn't charge for, but it got the word out about my book and they knew where to get it. And so, sometimes we had 3,000 people at our fireside. So, the word spread about it and about our musical CD as well. And so yeah, in a small way, we were able to get it out there and be online and have an online presence, and that helped. But that's a specific market, you know, with where what I do with the historical fiction is a mainstream market, and the children's books as well. So this is a wholly different area that is a lot more challenging.
Well, and the last thing I'm going to say, I think when it comes to the markets and to the arts, it's always good to build a relationship with whatever that distributor is that you meet and ask them, what are they looking for?
Mhm.
Mhm.
And I know in the film world, that's why the distributor that I sold my quarantine movie to, the first thing they said is, do you have more of that?
Mm.
And obviously, and it's weird when a distributor asks you, hey, do you have something, do you have it? Because usually it's a dream if a distributor says, hey, do you have a new film? Because usually you're desperate and you're trying to get a movie sold. And
Mhm.
but when they turn around and ask you, what do you got? That's when you listen and go, what are you looking for?
Right.
What's hot right now? What is it that oh, it's these darn romantic comedies, with the Christmas, everything with the name Christmas in it, and
Oh,
a little
yes.
girl, and it's just like, okay, punch, and sadly that's how it is. But it's always awesome to ask whatever that market is, what are they looking for? What
Mhm.
distributor, because they know the holes, they know what
Yeah.
they're trying to fill, and that's called obviously reverse engineering. So
Right.
reverse engineering in the arts is something that doesn't happen very often, because artists are a bunch of finicky, sappy kind of feeling people. And I'm one of them. We're both
Right.
artists, we feel,
Exactly.
oh, everybody wants to hear what I have to say. No, they don't. They don't want to
Yeah.
hear everything you have to say. And so you have to reverse engineer what are they asking for. So,
Right. Yeah.
but
And any
anyway,
creator who's good and smart can build around that,
yeah,
Mhm.
if they
whatever
can
that
reverse
is.
engineer and actually make it good,
Yeah.
that's like, wow, you got a hit. You got a hit there.
Well,
So,
thanks so much, guys.
hey, you bet, Kimberly.
Good
Good to
to
hear
hear
from
from
you.
you.
You too. See ya.
Last question. Do you use storyboards first?
I do. I use storyboards, and this new movie I'm doing is a comedy about these guys trying to make a sequel to a bad 80s sci-fi movie. It's really funny. And I've had to use some serious storyboards to save time so that the cameraman knows what I'm looking for.
Yep.
And so that's essentially, I worked as my own camera guy for many years, but I'm kind of retiring that. And so I have to draw things up and hand it over and say, make it look like this.
You
So-
could have Stephanie draw your storyboards for you, and then you could all become famous and then sell each cell like Disney did.
Yeah.
Oh,
Hundreds of dollars per cell.
Well, that's what
man.
Ralph McGuire is, the biggest storyboard artist. He did all the original Star Wars, where you see these weird iterations of Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker and R2, and all the characters. And he storyboarded all that. And and they sell, and they became big, pieces of, sadly, they're in my office, they're all that kind of artwork. So yeah, storyboards is very important, for imagination. So, but
Speaking of that, it's really important to be able to find an inspiration in your life and to be able to put your focus on that. Is it someone that you want to become like? Have them become part of your life, have them in your home. Embrace the quotes that uplift and empower you. And also, it's so important to have a team that supports you.
yeah. You gotta be
Kels and I are
supportive.
so blessed
Yeah.
that we are in a relationship that supports each other. We've both been in relationships that were not supportive, and we've had different experiences because of having what we had. We deeply appreciate having what we now have. You
Yeah.
know, when I did my children's books, it was only me. I wasn't supported by my husband at the time, and I was told that what I was doing was a waste of time.
Yeah.
Like
Very-
going and doing presentations at the schools, I would come home to guilt afterwards.
Yeah, so we support each other's arts. She supports my films. I support her podcasts that she does.
Yes.
And they're the arts.
Yes.
She has a really cool podcast called I'm No Therapist, But, and you can find that, and that's what she runs. And so, and I help her technically put it together.
And really,
So,
that's focused on relationships. When I was a single mom, I really wish that I had this kind of resource to be able to go to where I'm able to see ways of how to improve myself, how to find the kind of relationship that I desire to have, and what kind of tips could make my relationship even better. You know, that's what we hope for with that podcast, is that it's resources and connective stories that help each other through
yeah.
through trials. You know, find ways of improving yourself and loving yourself so that you can show up in a relationship in strong ways.
So there you go, Elaine. Hopefully we haven't bored you to death. So
I love it. I'm fascinated. And, you know, and I guess because this part of my brain is always doing this associative thing, it's always doing this connecting thing, you know. So I'm listening to the arts and I'm listening to the director and I'm listening to all of that. But I'm also listening for those parts that I can put into some other parts of my life.
Mhm.
And, you know, and what you said at the end, that's a big, big piece, is to find people that you can find that support you, people
Right.
that are like-minded, people that,
Yes.
and actually, this is something that Bruce is looking for right now with some eating and helping all of us on the planet to be more plant-based instead of, you know, very wasteful and, you know, and other kinds of things, is, you know, is finding people who are like-minded. So we are very happy that the two of you found each other.
Thank
And
you.
thank you so much for spending time with us today and just raising our energy with your very beings and
Mhm.
your ideas and what you're doing with your lives.
thank you. Thank you, Elaine, for having us on your show. So we
Yes.
truly appreciate it.
We
So,
we really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for letting us share our story, and we hope that it has encouraged you to live your dreams and to believe in yourself. Know that you have a purpose and a voice, and your story is needed. Speaking of stories, if you have a story of relationship triumph over trial, I'd love to hear from you.
yeah, she's always looking for new people to interview. So
Good.
Thank you, Coach Cher. Appreciate those words.
Yeah. So again, it was kelsgoodman.com and I'm no therapist, but
.com.
that's right.
.com. And so that's a way that we can continue to find these two.
That's correct.
You bet.
Yep.
So
Well,
And you can watch those podcasts on YouTube, or you can listen to it on your favorite podcast links.
good. SoundCloud or whatever.
yep.
All right. We'll see you later. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you, Elaine.
guys. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Good
Bye.
to meet you.